Today we'd like to talk a little bit about using canning jars, lids, and rings for our upcoming food preservation season. Treva, what can you tell us about the jars?
Well, first of all, you need to make sure that your jars are actually canning jars and not just some jar that food randomly was purchased in from the store. So make sure they're true canning jars. Then the next thing we want to do is make sure that we check the tops of the jars. So you want to make sure that the edge of the jar doesn't have any cracks or chips in it. Make sure that the entire top of the jar is free of any blemishes, because that will impact how the jars seal.
And what about the flat lids?
So flat lids are simply lids that are very flat with a rubber gasket built into the lid, compound built into the lid. These can only be used one time. They're not made for multiple uses, multiple seasons. We use them one time, and then after we have used the food out of that jar, we're going to throw that lid away and not use it again. Now, they do make lids that you can use multiple times. Those can be used up to 10 times. And on those lids, what you would do is you would simply, there would be marking on the lid. You would put like a tally mark every time that you use the lid, so that then you kept track of how many times it had been used. After that 10th use, you would throw the lid away again.
On these lids, though, I would also want to write down the product and the year, correct?
Right, after the jar is sealed, we certainly would want to do that, because we don't want to forget what that product was. Also, the other component we need when we're using the flat lids is we also need to use rings. So these rings are actually what holds the lid to the jar so that it can be processed. And so that ring needs to not have any rust on it. We don't want to have anything that would keep that lid from actually sealing correctly.
And how tight do I put that ring on?
Oh, that's a really good question. Rings only go fingertip tight. So fingertip tight means we put the ring on until it just stops, and then we quit. You don't take that extra little turn to just tighten it down a little bit more, which is something a lot of times we're tempted to do.
And why don't I want to get them on too tight?
Because when we're processing our food, one of the things that has to happen is that extra air that is in the jar has to come out of the jar. And if I have tightened that ring down and that lid down so tight, that air is not going to be able to escape out of the jar. So therefore, it won't be processed correctly.